Hi there, I'm Claudia Lash, and today I am talking about fabrics that might not usually get used in a quilt. You know, when you have little kids and you make flannel quilts or you make fluffy quilts, we often use flannel, we use minky, we use other fabrics in our quilts. But sometimes we forget about those different fabrics that you can find in a store that are great for quilts, especially if you have a special use for them. This quilt up here is called my African Story Quilt. It came about because we have a son, he's a Marine, he was stationed in Djibouti, Africa for about a year and a half or 2 years. No, for about 1 year, for about 8 months. It seemed like a year and a half to 2 years. Anyway, when he was there, I was also in a class with a friend who specialized, or he had a lot of African fabrics. So we used the African fabrics to piece them together to make a background, to make a nice, colorful background. Well, as you can see, the background fabrics in this quilt are quite busy, quite loud, there's a lot of color, and I wanted to add some applique on top. And so, luckily, I found some Halloweenish type black fabric at a local store. It's not usually carried in your local quilt shop, so you may have to go to a Joann's or a Michael's or some of those stores that carry costume or wedding apparel specialty type fabric stores. And we had some masks from Africa that Josh had sent us. So I used the masks to make a pattern, to make a guy mask, a girl mask, and then there are several different other African type pictures or symbols that I cut out of this black, it's sort of a black square of, I don't know if this is lame, but it's shiny black fabric. And I like the fact that it does show up a little bit better than just a flat black fabric would. I also like the fact that I could add some beads and other shells, different African type ornaments to the quilt. And then my husband wrote a story about this quilt, and the story is called Out of Djibouti, and we've put the story on the back. And so one day this will be Josh's quilt. Well, it's Josh's quilt right now. I don't know that you would want to take this quilt and launder it in a washing machine because of all the stuff that's on it and because of this fabric. But it is a great idea, or maybe not a great idea for everyone, but I thought it was a nice idea to use something different in my quilt. Since I used that fabric in this quilt, I also have used it in a few other quilts. This is one of my 12 by 12s. This is called Comedy and Tragedy in Today's World. And it has the same type of fabric, only it's got a gold kind of fabric. You can sew this down, the needle will go through it without any problem. And I think I just did on this, I did a straight stitch, or no, maybe I did a blanket stitch, but these I blanket stitched down around the edge, and they're fine. Another fabric that I really like to use in a quilt that I don't get enough of, and that is silk. Here are two quilts that are wall quilts, and they have silk fabric in them. Silk fabric is so nice. It has a shine and it shows up so well, and it takes stitches just very nicely. So I encourage you, if you can find some silk, use it in your quilts. Another fabric that's often overlooked and that I really like to use is a tulle. This is sort of an iridescent type of tulle. You can put this behind other motifs like this shell or this shell, and it stitches down fine. There's no problem with it. I don't know how durable it would be, but for this type of quilt, for a wall quilt, it's great. And finally, on the other side over there is another quilt, which I will move right over here to show you. This one I have shown before. This is called Whispering Leaves. Each of the leaves on this quilt has a hole in the center. The hole in the center is so that you can add a little, again, this kind of a clear iridescent tulle fabric. This tulle has some glitter, crystal-like, sparkly parts. And that just gives a quilt a little something extra, something that will shine when the light hits it. And I think it's a great addition to especially any type of quilt that will that you want something different in, to draw some attention. So I suggest, if you haven't used some weird or different fabrics in your quilts, if they're not going to be given to someone to launder and rough around and use a lot, then definitely check out some of those fabrics that are in the wedding or the bridal department of your local store. Thanks. Thank you for watching. And if you feel like you learned something from this presentation, go ahead and hit that like button. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe so you'll be notified when the next video comes along.